who have been prepared to serve and to be also for the borough in which we live or work. And we pray that we might never take for granted the special qualities and privileges of living or working in this area. And we leave this meeting in thy hands and do so in the name of our Lord and Saviour, Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Please be seated. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. The first item of business for this evening's meeting is, do any members have any personal or prejudicial interest to declare? It's just difficult to see with these lights, can anybody? Then I'm the only one, therefore, who's declaring a prejudicial interest. I will propose from the Chair this evening that the minutes of the meeting held on the 26th of May of this year be confirmed as a correct record.
I am happy to second that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. The third item on the agenda is the Mayor's announcements. So, of course, this is a very special evening for me, so please bear with me with the nerves. But I would like to tell you of a special first engagement that the mayoral team and I undertook on the 21st of June. We attended the Armed Forces Flag Day ceremony, an important and significant ceremony in celebration of the Armed Forces Day, in giving thanks to all our Armed Forces personnel, past and present. In attendance was Colonel Rosie Stone, DL, and when we were chatting at the end, I showed her the spent shell in the Mayor's parlour. This was presented to Councillor Oates in 2010 as Fylde Mayor, when she and I organised a parade through Kirkham for the 2nd Yorkshire Regiments, the Green Howards. Colonel Stone was very moved when she read the plaque on the shell, as she was also involved in Operation Herrick, and explained what a particularly tough and difficult time it had been for all involved. She gave us a very moving account of two very young soldiers. This is an engagement I'll remember from our mayoral year. It would be remiss of me if I didn't plug the fundraising for the Mayor's charities, and we have hit the ground running for the fundraising year, and I would hope that we receive some great support during the year in raising funds, and more details of the charities and the community group will be given during mayor making. But if you'd like to, please save a note in your diary for the 18th of August, as this is the first fundraising event we're going to have, and that's an In Conversation With. It's an author's, with an author for an afternoon tea. If any of you are interested in more information or a ticket, then speak to any of us on the mayoral team or Joe at the town hall. And I do have to say a huge thank you to Martin Alderman, so if you'll pass my thanks on, Alan. He's just a whiz at graphic design, and he's come up with the flyers and the tickets. So thank you to Martin on that. So the next item on the agenda, Chief Executive's Communications.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A bit loud. I'm in charge of logistics this evening. So if the Mayor introduces you to speak, please put your hand up and allow these gentlemen with the booster mics, or boomer mics, to arrive before you start talking. It's part of the logistics of the sound system this evening. So anybody who's invited to speak by the Mayor, these gentlemen unfortunately don't know everybody's name, put your hand up, they'll arrive with a microphone end of a stick, and then you can start talking, and that'll help us with the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is questions from the members of the council, but I believe Councillor Gill isn't with us this evening. Is that right? So what I propose is if Councillor Small can answer Councillor Gill's question in writing out of this meeting, and the answer will be published in the minutes. I would say that because the same item is on the agenda later, there may be a number of areas from Councillor Gill's question that can be debated and discussed in that item. Councillor Buckley?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's just on a point of order, if I may, because I believe in accordance with the Constitution, but I'm happy for it to be checked, that if a member's not here to ask the question, then a written answer will be provided to them. It doesn't say that they'll be provided in the minutes, but it does say that a written answer will be provided. So if I can just leave that to be clarified, that would be great. Thank you very much.
I'll ask the monitoring officer on that one. Thank you. Tracy?
Yes, Mr Mayor, that is the usual protocol. So if the member isn't in attendance, then the answer will be provided in writing but not replicated within the minutes. And the same for questions from members of the public.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that, thank you. So the next item on the agenda is questions from the members of the public. And the first one is, yes, there are 4 questions. And is Mrs Skinner here? No, Mrs Skinner isn't here. So Mrs Skinner's question will be answered and will receive a written reply from, is it you, Councillor Small?
It's me again, Mr Mayor, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Is Mrs Leeming in this evening for the second question? I'm just struggling with the lights, sorry. Oh yes, thank you Mrs Leeming. Can I invite you to ask your question, please?
Given the strength of public opinion in regard to saving the St Anne's Miniature Railway, can the Council please confirm that they are now fully committed to finding a solution that includes the attraction being retained on the seafront? Our written petition remains ongoing and receives more signatures every day. While we did have a very positive meeting with the Council representatives in regards to our future, we still have no guarantees in terms of our lease being renewed and definitive plans for us to return. When do the Council feel they will be in a position to deliver these to us?
Councillor Small, please can you respond to the lady's question?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I hope everybody can hear me. And good evening, Mrs Leeming. Nice to see you again. For members' benefits, I recently joined a meeting on the 14th of June between officers and the Leeming family, who are the tenants of the miniature railway on the promenade, and was able to reassure them that the latest revised proposals for the replacement of the sea defence wall retains all the amenities, including the miniature railway. So, the most effective way of dealing with the future lease arrangements would be to seek a surrender of the current lease at the same time as the grant for an agreement for lease, which would include an agreed final version of the new lease to be signed once occupation can be handed back after the seawall construction is completed. Now, the agreement for lease and agreed final lease will give the tenants the guarantee that they are looking for. Now, at the meeting which I attended, we suggested that the appropriate time to progress this element would be once we had received the formal approval of the scheme from the Environment Agency, which should be in September 2021. The tenants' existing arrangement is that they still have their existing lease until the 31st of March 22 with the statutory right to renewal. So I do hope that answer gives the kind of clarification that Mrs Leeming is asking for in terms of guarantees that the Council will be discussing with the new lease arrangements. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Small. Mrs Leeming, do you have a supplementary question you would like to ask that's related to the Councillor Small's response?
Our main concern after, obviously that all sounds very positive for coming back with a new lease and guarantee. Our main concern is that part of our business will be demolished and removed during the construction phase, and what the plans are for us to come back following the construction in some form or another.
Thank you, Councillor Small.
Okay.
What's that question?
Yeah, thank you. What I can say, and obviously I know people are interested to see the final point on this one, The scheme itself encompasses the miniature railway practically the same as it is now, in all intents and purposes. Now, obviously, should that be the case, once the officers actually discuss the lease, and it's not up for me to kind of get involved in that kind of, that's an officer's kind of responsibility. The guarantees are there, and I'm stating it tonight, that obviously we will be guaranteed a new lease to the family, and once the actual first phase of the construction is completed, hopefully the railway will be back in place and operating as soon as possible after that. There's no kind of intention to delay it in any shape or form. We want to see it operating at the earliest possible opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Small. Thank you. The third question on the agenda this evening is from Mr. Lake. Is Mr. Lake present? Thank you, Mr. Lake. Can I invite you to ask your question, please?
Mr. Chairman, councillors, ladies and gentlemen, my question is to question the wisdom and the financial implications and the risks attached to the proposed scheme to build a new ice cream kiosk on the grass at Lytham Green. For some years I was manager of the biggest HSBC branch in Preston, and I was well used to considering business ventures and weighing up risks and viability. Now this is a big project, £360,000. Seems to me that selling ice cream, sandwiches and alcohol is scarcely a council function. There will of course be an outcry if this moves forward. Just imagine, ladies and gentlemen, building a similar kiosk on the green at Ray Green, in the gardens of Lytham Hall or on Lytham Green. Many older councillors will remember the Scruples fiasco of many years ago. Nobody could make it work. In the end, the council and the Civic Society had to pay to remove the building. The existing kiosk operators are good and successful. I maintain there is room to extend the existing kiosk on both sides, that is the seaward side and the landward side. The proposed rent of £25,000 a year represents a return of about 7%. Not an attractive return, I maintain, for the risks involved. So what are the risks? Well, there'll be very low income for many months of the year. Takings will be low. Takings will be nil maybe for some months. There's an added risk should we have some bad summers. So, ladies and gentlemen, it seems to me that Farnborough Council are being asked to take on 100% of the risk, whereas the Dalmasso family take on no risk, or they lose interest. The Dalmasso family can just walk away. And to remind everybody, there's a pub nearby. The Lake Cafe is 500 yards away. There's yet another drinks and ice cream kiosk at the Suntan's end of Fairhaven. Finally, councillors, may I ask you, if you had the opportunity, would you invest any of your money in this venture?
Thank you, Mr. Lake. Councillor Saywood, can I ask you to respond, please, to that question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Lake, for your question. It is indeed a big project for the council, but as you state, it is not our function to sell refreshments, and that is not what we are looking to achieve here. This is an investment in a property, and selling the refreshments is the function of the tenant, not ourselves. We are merely entering into a property investment. Your next question relates to extending the current kiosk both seaward and landward side. This one is not a possibility and has been looked at due to its proximity to the new car park entrance at Stanner Bank. As for return on investment for this venture, as you've stated, it is 7%, which is very much in line with other council investments currently on our books. The proposed building will be constructed from a steel structure and as such will have low maintenance costs for the council. And as for your final question, yes, I would invest my own money into this venture. Having had several discussions with the Dalmasso, I have complete confidence in them and would invest in this myself. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Saywood. Mr Lake, do you have any supplementary questions based on Councillor Saywood's response?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. The final question in our papers this evening is from Mrs Fell. However, Mrs Fell is unable to attend the meeting this evening. So her question is as printed in the agenda papers, and a written response will be sent to her. Thank you. Agenda item 7, Deputy Mayor's Allowance. Councillor Buckley, please can you introduce this item?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr Mayor. This item was deferred from last year when we were in the midst of the pandemic. With a new mayoral team in place and restrictions easing, we all hope that the 21-22 municipal year will see the return of mayoral events, and it has been good to notice these happening already. The imbalance between the allowance for the mayor and the deputy should be addressed, and it is right to do so now, particularly as our mayor has made it clear her reliance upon the deputy will be significant. The recommendations are made by the independent panel who considered other councils' arrangements in coming to their proposal to increase the deputy mayor's allowance to £2,394. You will find the recommendations on page 6, which I move, Mr Mayor, and have a seconder. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Small.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm happy to stand to second that. May I reserve the right to speak if needed? Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody like to speak to this item?
Councillor Redcliffe. Sorry. Councillor Redcliffe.
Councillor Redcliffe.
Thank you very much, and it's great to get this mask off for a few seconds. But that's not the reason why I wanted to say a few words. I'm now in the position, for the last 2 years I've been the incumbent deputy mayor, and in that time, I suppose, that experience has given me a knowledge and certainly an insight in terms of what sort of qualities are required and what level of commitment and dedication. I've had that experience, so I'm in a good position to be able to say. First of all, it's a very privileged, special position in the community. You work very closely with the mayor, and the mayoral team that I was part of was a very inclusive team. As a deputy mayor, I was heavily involved, intensively involved, in a whole programme of events and activities, and actually gained a lot of satisfaction and fulfilment from performing that role. So I'm very grateful to the past mayor for including me and my wife, the deputy mayoress at that time, in that team effort. However, because it is a role that can be very demanding and very rewarding in equal measure, it is a role, I think, that should be recognised in terms of the value of that status. It isn't necessarily specifically about a figure that you put next to the role, but it's a figure that when you look at other figures should respect the role that you see in front of you and the role that is played out before you as a key civic figure. So I would very, very enthusiastically, now that it doesn't affect me and therefore there are no direct benefits to me, I would very much support this proposal for the people that are now going to take that role up in future years. I think it's a proper mark of respect and only a due recognition of the value of that role. Thank you.
Thank you, that's carried. Thank you. The next item, number 8 on the agenda, is the appointment of chair and vice chair. And again, Councillor Buckley, could you introduce this item, please?
Yes, thank you very much. I'm pleased to propose the appointment of Councillor Ellie Gaunt as Chairman of Audit and Standards and Councillor Ed Nash as Vice Chairman. I'd like to record my thanks to Councillor John Singleton for his long service in the chair. His diligence and commitment to the role has been second to none. The committee under his chairmanship has been in safe hands, and these are big shoes to fill. However, I have every confidence in Councillor Gaunt, her professional background, her knowledge and experience that she brings to the role, and I look forward to the new appointments which will take effect on the 1st of September. Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move the recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Small?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm happy to stand to second those.
Thank you. Would anybody like to speak on this item? No? Then can we go straight to the vote, please? All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. The vote has been carried. Thank you. Agenda item 9, Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act, RIPA, the policy, and Councillor Singleton. Can you introduce this item, please?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This comes to Council every year to comply with the regulations for the members to review and agree the RIPA policy. This applies to local councils and other bodies who wish to gather intelligence by means of covert surveillance investigations, which have been approved by the Chief Executive or, in his absence, the Head of Paid Service, and have been approved by the local magistrate court. The main changes, which are common sense, appear in section 6, which qualifies the situation on page 23 of tonight's papers. These relate to the destruction of material obtained by surveillance, which is unrelated to the specific aim of the application, and that applications are retained by this council for a period of 5 years. Mr Mayor, this council has not used the RIPA process for obtaining any such information now for 8 years, but members still have to approve this policy to satisfy the Information Powers Commissioner's Office should we be inspected again. So, Mr Mayor, I recommend the council endorses the updated RIPA policy, and I do have a seconder, Mr Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Singleton. And Councillor Ellie Gaunt, second, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to second. Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to second the recommendation and continue to support policy.
Thank you. Would anybody like to speak to this item? No. And then can we go straight to the vote, please? All those in favour? Thank you. Just struggling to see, sorry. Any against? Abstentions? No. Okay, thank you. Item 10 on the agenda, fully funded addition to the capital programme, Fairhaven Kiosk and Ice Cream Bar. I invite Councillor Saywood to introduce this item, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. At the last Tourism and Leisure meeting, a report was presented for a new and exciting building to replace the existing ice cream kiosk at Stanner Bank. The item before the Council today is to approve a new fully funded scheme to the Council's capital programme. In total, the budget is £360,000 spread over 2 financial years of 21-22 and 22-23 respectively. It gives me great pleasure today to propose this item, and I have a seconder in Councillor Gavin Harrison.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison.
Thank you. I'm very happy to second this recommendation.
and reserve the right to speak later.
Thank you. Can I invite members to speak to this item if they wish? Thank you. Councillor Lloyd? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hello. What a waste of taxpayers' money, that's what I think. Spending £375,000 on an ice cream kiosk. What are you doing, Farnborough Council? We are all here tonight thanks to the votes that our residents gave us, who expect their councillors to act responsibly and in their interests. This kiosk is neither responsible nor is it in the best interest of Fylde residents. We are all here tonight to act responsibly and, importantly, improve the quality of life for all the residents. This Star Trek ice cream kiosk isn't a responsible action. So I will ask councillors, where's the value for money that our community expects in this item? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else, please?
Councillor Redcliffe.
Is it Councillor Redcliffe? Okay, thank you.
I think we need to be very clear what we're approving or disapproving of tonight. And that is, this is a funding decision. No decisions have been made in terms of design, etc. yet. It would have to go before a full planning commission. I think the decision tonight is simply to earmark a section of funding for a potential project. And as such, rather than discuss the merits and demerits, if you feel that this could be a potential project, then you will presumably vote for earmarking that funding. We're early in this journey, and we need to actually allocate possible future funding to deliver a possible project.
I'm sorry to ask questions about this scheme at full council, but as far as I'm aware, this item has only gone to June G&L committee, nowhere else. I'm told it has been under consideration for 4 years by an officer group and also the budget working group, but as independent councillors are not allowed membership of that group, this is the first opportunity we have had to question the information in this very brief report, which, as far as I'm concerned, is scandalous. I'd therefore like to ask a number of questions, Mr. Mayor, and then, if necessary, come back when I receive answers. If I've done my sums right, it will take approximately 15 years to recoup the scheme costs, plus £2,676 loss of rent for 1 year. Is this correct? Do we provide all our lessees with repair and maintenance cost leases? Is it normal for the council to do this? How many toilets will be provided? And does this comply with laws and regulations? When exactly will this become a positive financial return to the council? There is another council facility within a very short distance providing a similar food facility. Does what is proposed by this report breach derogation of grant, i.e. in relation to 2 businesses in direct competition to each other with the same landlord? What costs are there likely to be, up to and including final design and scheme costs and procurement route, along with fuller provisionally agreed heads of term? I totally disagree with Councillor Redcliffe. We should not be allocating funding until we have all the detail. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Rhodes. Councillor O'Rourke.
Thank you. I would just like to say that I totally agree with Councillor Redcliffe. I think people are getting hung up on the detail and clearly the fitting and also provides a return to residents. The current kiosk is heavily used by residents as well as visitors to the area. It provides a return way beyond the pure financial return in terms of a tourist attraction. Look at the often criticised when it was coming through adventure golf, the people around queuing up to play. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the purposes of the Constitution is for this council to make decisions efficiently and also informed. Those decisions have to be informed. Now, until it's been looked at in more detail, we've got answers to questions that have been asked. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Collins, is this an amendment that you're choosing to submit?
It is.
Thank you. We need it in writing, and also, have you got a seconder?
I would like to be a seconder.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you for your patience, ladies and gentlemen. I'll read out the amendment so everybody's clear on it. Thank you, Councillor Collins. I propose an amendment that this item is deferred to a subsequent meeting of this council to enable this council to have to make. There's a seconder in Councillor Lloyd. So that's in play now.
Thank you. So now Councillor Collins has submitted the amendment. Would anybody like to speak to the amendment, please? Councillor Buckley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's a little bit of smoke and mirrors going on here for the item, Mr. Mayor, because the opportunity to ask all of those questions was at the T&L committee on the 10th of June, where there was a full debate, a very good, healthy debate, which I attended, and you, Mr. Mayor, asked a number of questions yourself, which were all answered. So there has been an opportunity before today's full council to ask those questions, and if members of the opposition don't take up that opportunity, then it is not for this council to change our arrangements to suit the diary arrangements of others. So I speak against that amendment, and I hope it will be voted down.
Thank you. Councillor Rhodes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, the only smoke and mirrors are from the leader of the council and her group. I believe they have had plenty of information of this over 4 years. We have been kept in the dark. The fact that we didn't attend the one and only meeting at which information was available should not preclude us from getting information. It's absolutely disgraceful. And I hope that this will soon cease and that we'll all be given equal information and equal time to consider things. What's going on at this council is disgraceful at the moment. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor
And I will support the amendment.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak to the amendment? Councillor Small.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Well, I've listened to a number of speakers with regard to this. I won't be supporting this amendment because this has had ample opportunity. But let's actually think exactly what we're asking about tonight. We're asking for this to be put on the capital programme. It's about finances. And from that point of view, it should be, people have kind of gone on to all sorts of things, talking about ice cream kiosks and things like that. Yes, it's convenient to wrap that title around it. It's a kiosk. And obviously, selling ice cream is part of it. But this tonight is about putting this on the capital programme. If it's delayed, it misses it. So let's actually stick with that and reject that amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Naughty.
In light of that comment, I have to ask why this was not brought forward at budget time and we had the opportunity to discuss it and put it on into the capital programme at that stage. So I will be voting for the amendment.
Councillor Naughty. Anybody else to speak to the amendment? Then Councillor
Saywood.
Councillor Saywood, are you speaking as the proposer of the substantive motion or speaking to the amendment?
Speaking to the amendment, Mr Mayor.
Okay, thank you.
I think it's all been said. However, I also will be voting against the amendment. This is turning into a Q&A session, as Councillor Buckley has already said, and we're here to put money in for this so it can go forward. I think we've got sidetracked. I think we've got taken into other things here, and I think we need to get back to where we were. So I will not be supporting this amendment. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Oates, you've already spoken.
Point of order, please, Mr Mayor.
Thank you.
Not one of the questions I asked has been answered yet. Does anybody intend answering them?
No.
I think only Councillor Saywood would be here, or one of the officers.
Quite happy to answer that question, Mr Mayor. As Councillor Buckley's already stated, this isn't the forum for questions and answers. That was when we had our T&L meeting where it had a good airing. So, in short, no. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Saywood. Then, if nobody else would like to speak to the amendment, I will take the vote on that now, please. All those in favour of the amendment?
Sorry about this. The lady at the back in the wheelchair, are you a councillor? I can't see properly, sorry. Sorry, I didn't recognise you there. Apologies. I saw you put your hand up. Thanks a lot.
Those against the amendment? Thank you. Then 31 votes against the amendment and 9-4. So the amendment has been lost. We go now back to the substantive motion. And Councillor Harrison, you reserved your right to speak. Would you like to speak on this item still?
Please. Thank you. Just very briefly, to go back to the question of this having had its airing at T&L, yes, it did. However, I must point out that at least one of the members of the opposition at that T&L chose not to attend that meeting, but instead to mount a campaign on social media, which, if there's a disgrace in this room tonight, that would have been it. But I look round and he isn't here again tonight.
Councillor Say would have asked you to sum up on the item, please, not to do that. Thank you.
In that case, I apologise. Yes, I'm happy to support the original motion. I've nothing further to say.
Thank you. Councillor Saywood, are you summing up on this item before we go to the vote?
Yes, Mr Mayor, although I'm not sure what much more there is to sum up. I think it's all been said. I think this is a fantastic opportunity for this council. I have full belief in this and look forward to where we go from here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now we go to the vote. Those for this item, please, if you'd like to vote for. And against?
And I have my vote recorded, please.
Thank you. We will record your votes, thank you. And there are 9 votes against and 31, I presume? 29 for. Thank you.
I thought everybody had their hands up, Mr Mayor.
Sorry?
I thought everybody had their hands up, Mr Mayor. I do apologise.
I can't see. I'm relying on Alan and Tracy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, but all the votes have been counted.
Thank you.
Agenda item 11, the fully funded capital budget increase for the Suntan seawall scheme. Councillor Small, you introduce this item, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. There are 2 recommendations here. The first and most important one at this stage is to put forward this request to Council for our contribution of £2.3 million as part of the overall £11.8 million programme. There are a number of stages still to go through, and there will be a members' learning hour tomorrow evening, which you are all invited to attend, and I hope everyone will attend, where there will be a Q&A session where you can ask questions and hopefully you'll get answers from the officers concerned. There's also then a special operational management committee on the 14th of July that will go into details of final designs, costs and procurement. Now, I can tell members that at this stage in the process, the Environmental Agency has been kept fully briefed and are happy with the progress to date. So the purpose of this report this evening is to seek the approval of Council for the inclusion of the scheme into the Council's capital programme, with the special operational management meeting to focus on the detailed aspects of the scheme. A couple of points that I would like to bring to your attention. Included in that 2.3 million is 600,000 for public realm amenity enhancements. And I can say to you that in the revised scheme, the amenities of the beach huts, golf and railway are all accommodated. There is a commitment for ongoing business support and stakeholder engagement throughout the planning and delivery of the scheme. And I also want to make one further point. We are conscious to limit the adverse impact on businesses by phasing the works and keeping businesses trading where possible. Also, and to help with this, a temporary car park will be built to actually when the main car park is removed. And a number of residents have been concerned about the RNLI slipway, which is of course a priority within this scheme. In actual fact, the new design allows for a faster launching of the RNLI. So I ask all members to support the 2 recommendations on your agenda paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Small. Councillor Kirkham, I believe you're seconding.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would like to second that. It's a great programme. Thank you.
Thank you. Any members, would you like to speak to this item? Thank you. Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if I'm quite right because I don't do this very often. The recommendation 2 is, the final bit of it is agreement of the final design, scheme costs and procurement route. I would like that final taken out and put best design, scheme, costs and procurement route put in instead. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hodgson, is that an amendment? Then I would ask if you
Excuse
could
me,
put...
Mr. Mayor.
Pardon?
Excuse me.
Councillor Small.
I always enjoy Councillor Hodgson's actually contributions to committee. I'm very happy to accept that.
Thank you.
Doesn't need to go to an
Okay.
amendment.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else to speak, please?
Councillor O'Rourke.
Councillor O'Rourke, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just an observation that it appears to me that this item, in essence, is very similar to the last item, but I don't see anybody calling for it to be deferred because we haven't got the lease agreed on the railway, the mini railway or the golf, or we haven't got the lease agreed, or calling into question Mrs. Leeming and whether it's a risk in the future to put it back. And I totally support that, and I'm not being critical at all. I want to see those attractions, and I want to see them there and improved, as I said, for the replacement kiosk. And I think kiosk is the wrong way, but the building to replace the kiosk at Fairhaven. But just an observation that it seems to be that, that didn't seem to meet the intended principle, but this one obviously does. Thank you.
Councillor Clayton.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I realise that it's not a Q&A session here, but I'd like to try and determine what the scope for amendments that may be presented at the Operation Management Committee. I was tempted to seek a deferment here, but I realise that that is unlikely to occur. But because we heard and we now realise that the submissions that will be being placed before us tomorrow, we've not had any meetings where we've had any feedback given to us. So the proposition that's before us obviously includes item 2, and it's item 2 that I'm having some concerns for, and I wonder if it's possible for our chairman, Councillor Small, to give some indication of the scope for amendments. I think I'm reflecting the thoughts that Councillor Hodgson has, that there's a concern that we're going to be simply given a submission of a preferred option without any possibility of having any amendments that we can make. So it's that scope for the amendments that will hopefully be presented to us at the Operation Management Committee. I'm some difficulty where I go with this now, because I know it's not a Q&A session, but whether or not Councillor Small could give some indication of the amendments that we may or may not, subject to what the presentations are, what scope we will have to deal with that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Oates.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, in common with the last item, independent councillors have been denied all the necessary information they need in order to make a considered decision about this budget increase. I'd love to vote this through, because then I would have had time to ask questions, be in possession of all the facts, and have been able to input to the decision-making process. But I haven't, and nor have our members. I'm incredulous that a briefing meeting has been set up tomorrow evening, followed by a special meeting of the committee on the 14th of July, both after the funding decision is made this evening. Apparently, Councillor Kirkham was appointed as a council representative to take this scheme forward. I believe that Councillors Clayton and Hodgson stressed at the time the appointment was made that the committee must be kept informed via Councillor Kirkham of progress before any final decision making is made on the design, and in fact this was minuted. They wanted the updated information to ensure that the committee were not presented with a fait accompli, as has happened in the past. Unfortunately, this hasn't happened. Once again, the cart is being put before the horse, with council being asked for funding without full information. And for this reason, I can't vote for this evening. I do understand the importance of this, but I am most unhappy with the process used. What is happening at this council must stop. We should all have the same information at the same time, and we are all elected equally, so no one councillor is more important than another, and our electorate must be allowed to be represented equally. I do have a number of questions, but since they won't be answered, I won't ask them. I'll save my breath. I can't make the briefing tomorrow because some of us do have other meetings that they have to attend, and can't just simply turn up at the whim of when the Conservatives decide to have meetings. I won't be there tomorrow. I will send my questions, and as I've said, I will be voting against this tonight. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Rhodes. Councillor Nolte.
Thank you. Sorry, can I just move forward? Yes, Councillor O'Rourke, I think there's a huge difference here. This is vital work to protect the whole of the Files and our bit of Fylde coast. I'm very much in favour of a Suntan seawall scheme, very much in favour of it. However, so I'm very much in favour of the first bit, but I am not fully informed on the second bit. So I don't know whether this is the best design or whether the costs are right or the procurement route. I'm not informed on that. So what do? Do I vote for it because I'm very much in favour of protecting our coast? Or do I vote against it because I don't feel fully informed? Perhaps somebody can give me guidance, please.
Thank you, Councillor Nolte.
Councillor Small.
Councillor Small, you are in a position to...
If it's just summing up, Mr Mayor, I'm happy to sum up
if you feel appropriate to put certain councillors' minds at rest, that would be appreciated.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I shall do my very best. As I mentioned in the presentation, there is a learning hour, probably will last a lot longer than an hour, I suspect, where I hope members will come along. I know and hear what Councillor Mrs Ode said about not being able to make it, but I hope that a colleague of hers can put a question there and to actually be put through tomorrow night. It is the chance for members to actually ask what they like. And I know that I've spoken to quite a few members who have kind of issues, some concerns, some kind of alternative ideas, and that's the whole purpose of the learning hour, that I would like members to go away at the end of that session and be fully appraised of what the likely work is and when it will go ahead. I can't say about amendments, I just can't answer that question because obviously I know you, Councillor Clayton, I suspect you will be coming to the learning hour tomorrow, and I would hope that at the end of that session you'll be much wiser as to where we're up to than obviously you are at the present time. And I hope that as a result of that you'll be able to support the scheme. So what I will say to everyone is do come along. Do actually take part, do put your questions forward because you have got that opportunity. And it's not going to be reserved just for Conservatives, it will be reserved for any member to actually raise and ask the questions that they have. And I have already received a number of questions from a couple of councillors that may or may not be there that actually want to ask certain aspects of it. But by the end of that session, I'm hoping that members will go away much clearer as to what this scheme fully entails. So, you know, from that point of view, it has been to committee, and this is, and I'll go back to the previous item, this is about putting it in the capital programme. I don't want to get carried away with the actual words and wherefores, because there are two further bites at the cherry at this. So I would hope, please, that members would see fit to support those two recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Small. Right, we'll now take this to the vote. So, all those in favour of this item, can you please show? And those against, please. Thank you. The vote has been carried. Thank you. The next item on the agenda, I'm going to leave you, and the Deputy will now take over for a few minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 12, fully funded capital budget increase and award of grant Kirkham Future High Street Fund. I invite Councillor Redcliffe to introduce the item.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to really say a few words about a hugely significant scheme. We're asked tonight to consider approving, under the Future High Street Fund, an award of a grant from the Ministry of Housing and Communities and Local Government of, and I'll say this very slowly, the figure of £6.290 million, which basically represents a fully funded increase to the capital budget. What is it for? It's for the development of a town centre strategy for Kirkham. It's a 100% grant to help to facilitate the delivery of specific projects included in the bid, alongside the Heritage Action Zone, which we have already received £1.791 million, which is already in the capital budget. These are huge sums of money. The money will be spent over 3 years and the funding will be phased. And of course, part of the recommendations tonight is to approve that year one expenditure of £3,489,071, which has already been transferred to enable the project to start. We've talked about detail tonight, and I hope that the link has been used by members to the Planning Committee report on the 23rd of June, where there was a high level of detail regarding these proposals. Very briefly, the scope of the scheme. The principal projects that this funding will deliver will be the purchase of 3 key buildings in Kirkham for repurposing, the hillside, where you will see a heritage and skills training centre for crafts, the Kirkgate Centre, where you will see retail and residential spaces created, and outdoor space. The old TSB Bank, which will become a community hub, a cinema and arts centre. Public realm reconfiguration and redesign. Public events space. Public realm enhancements in Poulton Street and Town End. And then finally, repurposing and refacing building facades of Polton Street and bringing the standards up to those required for a conservation area. Finally, 57 areas through the Government Future High Street Fund were allocated grants. Kirkham was the only successful bid in Lancashire. And I think as a community, all members and all officers ought to be very proud of this council, which has delivered effectively almost £10 million of funding for one of our three key towns, the market town of Kirkham. And we will see a very exciting, transformative project unfold in the next 3 years. Our thanks to all those who have been involved in achieving this fantastic outcome. I am very, very happy to move this recommendation, and I believe I have a seconder, Councillor Fiddler. Thank you.
Councillor Fiddler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have had several updates on the Kirkham scheme, and I am sure we all agree it's a phenomenal level of investment from government. The scheme will see new shops created, landlords given match funding to improvements to existing units, new homes and community facilities in the town centre. The reports from the officers, notably Andrew Chatterjee, have been excellent and welcomed several times by the Planning Committee. The grants awarded are a real reflection of the sterling work of Fylde Council, along with Kirkham Town Council and the town's business group. I understand there are already several new businesses in the process of opening and registering interest. Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, I am delighted to second the proposal.
Thank you. Do we have any other members who would like to speak to this item? No, we shall go to the vote then, please. Those? Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Can we have a vote on the item, please? That's clearly carried. Thank you. Can I invite the Mayor to return? Thank you.
We can't. Howie will tell me off. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Now you can sit down. Economic Development Team Resourcing. So, Councillor Buckley, please can you introduce this item?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. The priority of this council towards economic development is clear to see from our recent recruitment of a town centre manager and a new economic development officer. Our regeneration manager, Paul Drinnan, is retiring soon, having been with the council for 36 years. And if I may, in case I don't get the opportunity elsewhere, I'd like to pay tribute to him and thank him for all his years of service. It is proposed that the expanded economic development team should be headed up by a full-time post, which, together with an increase of hours for the technical support officer, will require an increased revenue budget as set out in the recommendation, which is £15,657 during the current financial year and £32,176 in subsequent years. The matter was put to the Planning Committee on 23rd of June, who have requested Council to approve the increase. I move the recommendations, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Small.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, I'm very happy to stand to second those, and may I reserve the right to speak if needed. Thank you.
Would anybody like to speak to this item? No, can't see anyone. Can we take the vote, please? All those in favour? So that's a unanimous decision. Thank you. Agenda item 14 on our papers is the fully funded revenue budget increase, the education contribution relating to Section 106 agreement for development at the former Government Offices site, Hay Houses Lane. Councillor Fiddler.
This is to be funded from Section 106 contributions. Mr Mayor, I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Fiddler. Councillor Redcliffe.
Yes, I'm very happy to second this proposal. We all know that 106 payments are there to mitigate the impacts of development, and certainly this money will be very useful in terms of LCC and Clifton School. Thank you.
Thank you. Would any members like to speak to this item? No. Then can we go straight to the vote, please? All those in favour? That's a unanimous decision. Thank you very much. And the final item on the agenda this evening, item 15, the purchase of land adjacent to Squiresgate Station, which has a CPO request. Councillor Buckley, please can you introduce the item?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move the recommendations from the Finance and Democracy Committee to proceed with a compulsory purchase order for the land at Squiresgate Railway Station to enable level access to the platform, which would greatly benefit customers catching a train or alighting from a train who struggle with the steep flight of steps from Squiresgate Bridge. I move the recommendations, and I have a seconder in my ward colleague, Councillor Jakes.
Thank you. Councillor Jakes.
Thank you. It gives me great pleasure as ward councillor to second this proposal. And if any of you have attempted to access Squiresgate Station, the only point for pedestrians is by the way of the 39 steps down to the railway platform, and also the reverse this time, exiting the platform. It's very similar to the steep access at Kirkham and Wesham, but without the added canopy over the top to keep the rain off. This has a limiting effect on those who may wish to board the train here. Anyone with a disability, particularly of the ambulatory kind, i.e. by walking like me, is severely restricted. Even those with vertigo can be affected by the steepness when you look down from the top of the bridge to where the platform is. And we also need to take account of the people who may have children with prams, or even with the manhandling of suitcases down or up the steps, as well as themselves. When reaching the platform, it is a lovely place to wait for the train, thanks to the friends and all the hard work they have put in to make it look so nice with their plants, etc. And it is a pleasure to visit, but the only problem is getting there. The nub of the problem preventing a level entrance onto the platform, and it is only a very small piece of land that we require. I don't know what it is in English, but to me, I haven't measured it, but it looks to be about 2 metres square. And this is something that has concerned me for a long time, even before the housing was first mooted at the Butlin site. And so we want to make the station accessible to all. Completing the access from the top of New Road up by a little bit of pathway to this piece of land that we want to be compulsory purchased is the last step in this lovely access to the station, and we will have a win-win-win situation for all when it is completed. It'll be a win. The first one is the access for all the passengers wanting to access the train as a means of transport. Win 2, an increase in footfall for the railway in paying passengers, making it more sustainable. And win 3, the borough increasing its greening potential by encouraging all to be able to use the railway and so cut down on road traffic journeys. I hope that I can count on you for support for this proposal, and I reserve the right to speak again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jakes. Are there any members who would like to speak to this item? No. Then we can go straight to the vote, please. Those in favour? Yep, that's a unanimous decision. Thank you, everyone. So that brings the business to a close. Thank you for this evening. Hopefully 2 weeks tomorrow we'll be back here again, and perhaps a little bit more relaxed. We may even be getting rid of these awful masks. So thank you, everyone, and good night.
Please don't stop me.